The fact is, behavioral-based risk reduction is the primary way to reduce community exposure.
When you have information, and everyone on this call is a leader of some sort, you gather information, you make things as predictable and certain as you can in an uncertain environment. The next thing is, what do you do with the information when you're bombarded with those questions like I showed on the first slide? What do you do with the information? Well, it's not that difficult to make the decisions. I know there are times that our leadership, we get together and we're like, what are we going to do? We go back to two things. Really simple. And we regularly will ask the employees, is there any decision that we made that's outside of the organizational values? Please tell me. And that way you find out right away, because there are times that they're not in alignment. But the first thing is making, every organization is different depending on the industry that you're in, but ours being in a human service industry, and people are the most precious asset. We're not a bank, we're not private equity investors. The people come first. So if you go back to every single decision, I can think of, just in this week, Jason Glasky, Matt Linder, and Pierre had to make decisions, and it was a lot simpler to make those decisions based on two things: the company values of the employee being first and their family being first for safety. And then the second one, behavioral science and data. You don't need to micromanage your people and your folks that you provide leadership to. If the values are solid, you can constantly ask them if you're in alignment with the values, and you use behavior science. In addition to the predictability and consistency and value-based decisions and science, the best thing you can do now is radical, overboard, insane infection control. So if that's going to create a more predictable, safe environment for employees and people to feel safe enough that they can engage in behaviors that are not just fear to avoid something, they can be courageous to receive positive reinforcement for something that inspires them, you're going to need insane infection control. So the future, from looking at what's going on, looking at behavioral data and seeing what's currently happening, some of these are opinion-based, I want to let you know. And some of them are what we're doing exactly right now with the plexiglass sneeze guards, where people sit, PPE. But a couple examples of these are, you've seen it already, you go into Wawa, and there are three things here you're going to see. The PPE in the center, the idea that social distancing and markings, we call those discriminative stimuli, so the person knows where to go so that it's a strong infection control procedure. And then, as you can see on the right, these types of acrylic things. Look at the future of the workplace, and schools are going to involve these things for the most part. They should. And then other infection control mechanisms, by consulting with Dr. Marin, who's on this call, and he's going to speak in a little while, the future of schools and the future of organizations, when things open up and it's appropriate to go places, one of the factors is students and employees and customers should go in one way, exit another. That's going to be one factor that's critical. You'll see the evidence that it's better that people don't cross paths. If they're going to cross paths, you should probably do it behind a barrier. Secondly, air filtration systems. There still needs to be more research on that. Some of the air filtration systems have UV lights. There needs to be more research on that.
So when we talked about flattening the curve initially, it was really a fail-safe strategy. It was because we didn't do enough to contain the virus and reduce the risk of being infected. And as a result, we needed to shut down in order to protect everybody and as well not overwhelm our health systems. So flattening the curve was really about ensuring that the people who were getting sick were going to be able to get care. But that wasn't necessarily about, and it did have a secondary effect of preventing many of us from getting infected, but it's not a primary strategy to make people safe as we open up our communities. So when you think about a virus, I mean, we've heard a lot about this war, but the fact is viruses don't act that way. Viruses will ambush a community and do its damage based on the population density. And that's why dense states, New York, New Jersey, Michigan, California, were initially more affected than other states. But as the case rates in those states go down, the virus will find new places to go, and we will not be able to create barriers to its transmission. And that's why we're now seeing the South. What's happened in Alabama is just horrific, and more Midwest states. And we will continue to see the infection move, however, significantly more slowly, because it's now moving to less population dense areas. So, okay, what about treatments and vaccines? Well, the fact is behavioral-based risk reduction is the primary way to reduce community exposure. The primary and optimal way to do that is by testing the entire population, or as much as possible, not just people who are sick, but testing people across a community, isolating people who have the virus, tracing their contacts and isolating them, and taking behavior-based risk reduction strategies. Treatment itself is a safety net solution. So all this talk about drugs is wonderful for people who do get sick, but our primary goal has to be to prevent exposure to the virus. So yes, it's important we have treatments, but it's much better to work more upstream, and again, take more of a safety-based, a risk reduction-based approach.